the business models of major labels these days are kind of more like, venture capitalists.
Right.
And I say that that's just what they do. They're not in the business of developing artists, and they want to throw a bunch of money on stuff that has already proven that it's working.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And for me, I worked in the music business to do what I love, which is developing artists and working on music. And if I would have been a banker, I would have, done the Goldman track right out of school or whatever. But
what do you think the success rate is for major label artists these days, at least when you were at Capitol, in terms of how many artists you would sign versus how many would recoup the cost of their advance to then, greenlit it?
Oh, very, 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 very few.
Very few. Okay.
Yeah, I think when you sign a record deal, you should assume that could be the last check you see from the recording side of your business.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, the book. Welcome to season 3 of the podcast. I can't believe we're already at season 3. Today, my guest is Talya Elitzer. She is the co-founder of Godmode, a Grammy-nominated artist development company. And they have label side, they have management, they have publishing. Their clients include Channel Trace, JPEGMAFIA, Love Leo, Yaeji, and this is a really interesting company. Talya came out of the major label system. She previously was Senior A&R at Capitol Records, where she shepherded Billboard-topping releases for artists such as Katy Perry, Sam Smith, and Beck. And before Capitol, she was a booking agent at William Morris Entertainment, booking Britney Spears, Grace Jones, and the likes. And she, before that, was at Mick Management, famously one of John Mayer's first manager, and also has been manager for Sarah McLachlan. So she has seen all sides. She's seen the management, the label, and the booking, and they just struck a deal with Hypnosis Publishing to now have a publishing arm of Godmode. Godmode is one of these companies in the new music business that is kind of filling the void of artist development. Now that you'll hear Talya talk about it quite extensively of how major labels don't do artist development anymore, it is up to the artist and the manager. But more specifically, if the artist doesn't necessarily have a manager, this Godmode is a company that is there for them to be all of the above, be whatever they need, and really get into the weeds with the artist and create that artist world, which Talya will talk a lot more about. As always, you can find us at Ari's Take on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram and Twitter. Visit aristake.com to get on that email list. That is where you're going to get the most up-to-date information about everything. And head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review if you can. Take like 30 seconds and do that. That really, really helps. And subscribe to this show, however you're listening to it. Like, subscribe, follow. Hit that up thumb if you're on YouTube. Leave us a comment. I read most of the comments. I try to get back to everyone. I read all the reviews and the comments and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. If you're digging this show, just let me know you're digging it. And if you're not, you could send me a DM about it, and I'll try to improve. We don't need that to air that publicly. Anyway, all right, let's kick in the show. Talya Elitzer from Godmode. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're in LA, right?
I am, yeah.
Okay, cool. Now that we've just every meeting is now virtual. I mean, we could be anywhere in the world right now, but I bet we're like a block away and we don't even know it from
very
each other.
Close.
Right?
Yes.
Cool. Sweet. So I am very interested, all things Godmode, primarily because as we're in this whole new music industry, everything has dramatically shifted into what the traditional team means. Mm-hmm. And I know you come from the major label world. You were previously at Capitol Records as A&R. Before that, you were in booking at William Morris, right? WME?
Yep.
So tell me, step me through the process, because I'm actually curious how and why you started Godmode, and just give me the inception story.
Totally. I mean, basically, we started Godmode when I was we basically just started throwing parties when I lived in New York, and when I was a lot younger and more fun than I am now. And basically, we just started throwing parties for our friends. And my partner Nick is one of the OG guys from Pitchfork, and at the time was learning. Nick Sylvester, yes, and at the time was learning to produce under this guy James Murphy, who's the lead singer of LCD Sound System.
Sure.
And we kind of just would like put out music as a reason to throw another party. And, it kind of, that was sort of when the scene in Brooklyn was really happening, kind of in like 2009, 10 time. Okay. And basically I moved out to LA to do A&R for Capitol. And the first file on my Capitol computer happened to be from an unsolicited demo by an artist that kind of became our first Godmode artist.
Wow.
And like you do as an A&R, you always have to have a solid side hustle.
Right.
And basically that artist and that project kind of became the catalyst to what Godmode is today. It's an artist named Shamir, and we got sent the demo. The voice was very androgynous. Nick, we flew Shamir out to work with Nick. Nick heard the voice in person, was like, "Oh my God, you sound like Sylvester, the dance artist." And this should be dance music. Like, this is a no brainer. And they made his first EP in a couple days. And at the time, then there was a lot of buzz around it. At the time, we signed him to XL Records. We released his EP ourselves, and then kind of just acted as managers for him, signed him to XL. And, it was an interesting experience. I think we just had a very different perspective than they did on what it takes to release music in this day and age. And they were very excited about more traditional things like billboards and about, BBC Radio.
And by they, are you talking XL, or do you mean the artist? Like
XL, excuse me.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were just sort of like, oh wait, what about digital advertising? What about this was back in 2012, 2013, sure. And he was recouped in his deal before the album even came out. Wow. And that whole experience was just sort of the catalyst to what we are today, because we were like, oh, we should just be doing this ourselves. Yes. And so basically that became, from there on out, we didn't want to have to force our artists, or, the traditional model is you get some buzz around you, whether it's because you're streaming, whether it's because there's buzz in the industry, and then you sign a record deal. And we wanted to put together some sort of infrastructure where our artists didn't have to go into those deals, and that we could fund them how we wanted, so they weren't, signed for their whole lives to these record companies. And so that was really why we started it. And secondly, I was doing A&R for a major label, and the business models of major labels these days are kind of more like, venture capitalists. Right. And I say that that's just what they do. They're not in the business of developing artists, and they want to throw a bunch of money on stuff that has already proven that it's working. And for me, I worked in the music business to do what I love, which is developing artists and working on music. And if I would have been a banker, I would have, done the Goldman track right out of school or whatever. But
what do you think the success rate is for major label artists these days, or at least when you were at Capitol, in terms of how many artists you would sign versus how many would recoup the cost of their advance to then, greenlit?
Oh, very, 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 very few.
Very few.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you sign a record deal, you should assume that could be the last check you see from the recording side of your business. Sure. I mean, there are exceptions, like some artists who I know of some artists who are signed to majors who do exceptionally well in the sync space, or who just happen to stream very well, but aren't necessarily an A-list artist. Like, those exist as well, but that's more of the anomaly than the norm. But yeah, so we so the other part of the reason for starting Godmode the way that we did was just that artists need that development, and they need, I think, as power has gone away from the major record companies, that also means that a lot of that infrastructure and a lot of that support system that used to be there is no longer there. And we built a company that could really help support artists, both creatively, both business strategy wise, both just with everything. And we really believe that every detail of every project matters. And like something that was super frustrating for me when I was at Capitol was, I could put together the perfect session with like, the right producer, the right writer, and the artist. But if the artwork was like wrong, or if the way that it was rolled out was wrong, it could squash the entire release.
Right.
And so we're very much like, I'm a crazy person, and we're very obsessed with all these details of doing it properly. And really, we believe that if you put the right strategy in place and really put that work in, it pays off.
I love that. And it's very inspiring to hear that. I would imagine a lot of just a lot of A&R people in general are frustrated at labels because they see that process and they see that, they might do their job, but their hands are tied when it comes to releasing budget to enable the projects that they're trying to do, or even just inspire the other departments to rally around the artists that they're so excited about because they're not Katy Perry or whatever.
Completely.
So that's great. So what Godmode is now, let's kind of fast forward. What do you do now? So you listed off a bunch of things. Every step of the process is so important. But what does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah. So we are a management company. We are a record label. And we also just recently started a publishing company.
With Hypnosis, right? A partnership
with Hypnosis.
Cool. Amazing. Okay, so you're all in one here. That's very exciting.
I mean, to be honest, it's different for every artist. Not every artist is necessarily touching all of those things.
Gotcha.
And it just kind of makes we have those capabilities depending on what is right for any specific artist.
So when you bring an artist on, is it I guess how streamlined is this process, or how do you have kind of a system that's set up that they kind of go through step A, then step B, then step C, or is it kind of you start with management?
It honestly just completely varies based on who the artist is. Like, for instance, we started working with an artist named JPEGMAFIA a couple years ago, and he was already in a record deal. And so we just work with him on the management front.
Gotcha.
Probably moving forward, we'll be working together more closely on the record front, but that's still to be determined as to what that looks like. But it's
Republic isn't gonna greenlight the next.
Republic wants to. I think JPEG is someone that needs to have his own have his own shop. But but no, I mean so as an example, like that's one. Other artists like Channel Trace. We've worked with, from day one of his career, and started out by, we're like management and label for that. And so it just depends on what is right for an artist. Or for instance, we have an artist named Love Leo, who we work with for management and for label. And he had a song blow up on TikTok, like you do these days. And and we licensed that we did a deal with Republic actually for that. So we have partnerships on some of our projects as well.
Okay, I want to talk about that, and then I do want to go back to Channel Trace, because I think that's an interesting story. I want to hear the whole thing. But for Love Leo, this is I'm hearing a lot more of these, licensing deals with indie artists and major labels these days. But was this kind of a I guess, what do you call this? Was this I don't know how much you can reveal of the deal, but is this kind of just like a 50-50 thing with Republic and Godmode, or with Republic and Love Leo, and you're just on the management side? Or was this like you're almost like a subsidiary of Republic, or are you just just step me through how that even works.
Totally. I can't get into this like specific numbers or anything like that, but basically it's a partnership with Republic just for that artist, between Godmode and Republic. And because Leo was signed to us for records before.
Okay.
So it was a deal, obviously, you know, it actually was an incredible deal. Like really I don't know that I've ever seen such a favorable artist deal, because when artists are signed to us for records, and I don't know if I'm getting too in the weeds on this, so stop me, but
no, it's great.
If I'm going to license a record that is a Godmode record to somebody else, we can only license the rights that we have.
Right.
So, and we're never even touching, you know, remotely any of the rights at a major label. Like our record deals are like the friendliest deals ever. And so then when I'm licensing it, I can say, oh, I'm sorry, Universal, Leo, you can't have any of his touring. You can't have any of these other rights because those are not mine to give. Right.
Now, like 360 deals. And I mean, but are 360 deals even that common anymore in the major label? Still that common. Okay. Because
unless it's a very competitive situation, it's pretty common.
Weird. Okay. Because it's interesting how I'm hearing both ends of the spectrum. I'm hearing the 360 deals are happening, but on the other end of the spectrum, I'm talking to artists every day that are getting licensing deals with major labels with fat advances, no ownership, just like a 12 to 15 year licensing deal, retaining all ownership, and 50-50 split on royalties. So it's just like you got the both ends of the extreme here. So I'm assuming
but you're probably talking to artists that have something going for them too.
Yeah, I mean, I had Ricky Montgomery on the show not too long ago. He had 2 songs go viral on TikTok, and you know, got into a crazy bidding war, and in the end, it was Warner that offered him a 50-50 licensing deal with a big advance. It was just like, wow, we were hearing that 5 years ago from indie artists.
No, and that's sort of in those situations, kind of anything's possible to a degree. And that's what, you know, that's why in a lot of cases that's why I say major labels are like VCs, because they're like, oh, this is working, this is happening. So if I get this, it doesn't matter, you know, if I'm losing out on these other things, I just need to get this.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So, and just to break down I know we are in the weeds, but I want to stay there for a minute because a lot of, you know, all our listeners are right here with us right now. But just to explain a few of the things we're talking about, when we do say licensing deal with a major label, can you explain what that actually means?
Sure. It just means basically you are loaning the right to, I guess a lawyer would maybe tweak my words here, but you're basically saying to a major, you can distribute and you have the rights to this record for a period of time.
Okay.
And then after that, you get it back fully. So a license period could be as favorable as 12 to 15 years, could be as favorable as 8 years, you know, or it could be 50 years. So, and that's all part of that negotiation.
And typically with licensing deals, are you seeing that it's similar? They give an advance, it's a royalty share, and then they kind of do what they would normally do with a traditional record deal for however long the license is for? Yeah, it really doesn't vary. I think, you know, there are in situations like, to use Love Leo as the example, because it is a license deal and because we have, you know, we are the people that they are licensing from, we are able to push back on some of the annoying major label things that happen. So that's really helpful to our artists. Give me one of those annoying major label things that happen that you can push back on.
I have to think about what I can say. We were deep in quarantine. This is probably spring of 2020. And so Leo's an incredible creative, and he directs and is really the mastermind behind all of his music videos. And he was filming a true quarantine music video in his, you know, studio apartment in downtown LA. And one of the major scenes was him in front of his bookcase. And they got very upset. The BA department got very upset that you could see the titles of some of the books in the background, which if you're a normal person watching the video, you know, you can't see them. And was so beside the point of all of it. But, you know, this is a publicly traded company. And so they have to be aware of getting sued and, you know, all this stuff. But as I was able to say, because it was a license, like, sorry guys, like, we're uploading this anyways.
Okay.
Because, you know, that we're not like, maybe the liability falls more on us, but we're like, sorry, we're doing it anyways. And so a lot of those creative decisions, we're able to kind of like act as a protector for our artists in those deals.
That's a really great other distinction with a licensing deal, is that because they don't own it, you still have the ability to do whatever you want. And
correct.
You, like, if they were to, you know, if it was a traditional record deal, they would own the masters, and so they had the final say, whereas now if you license it to them, you still have the final say, right?
I mean, look, I think there are, I don't think in, other than stuff like that, I don't think there's a huge, to talk about license versus ownership. I think a lot of the way that that's spoken about online is fairly elementary, and I don't think it's that black and white. Okay. I think you want people. I don't think it's bad to necessarily to be in either situation. So.
Okay, cool. All right. So for Channel Trace, where you say you're kind of doing everything, you got you started with him fairly early. Step me through that process, or how you guys started working together, and then how you did this quote unquote artist development, and how that all went down.
Yeah, I mean, Channel's from Compton originally. I met him actually in a session with a buddy of his, actually this artist named August 08, who I think is on Def Jam now.
Okay.
And because August was a writer that I had worked with a bunch. And I was coming in the room. I don't even remember who the artist session was for at this point. And I was just coming to say hi to August, and Channel was there. And I just was sort of like, oh, who's that guy? And because normally, you know, LA songwriters and producers have usually they have a very specific vibe, and Channel was just so different. And I just was like, oh, we just sort of chatted a bit. I had run into him a few times around, you know, at shows later too. And after I left Capitol, he had sent out some like very silly artist newsletter, one of those things that you think never works, but it just reminded me of him. And so I hit him up and brought him by the studio, and he and my partner Nick made his song Controller like the next day.
Wow.
And Channel had actually never put his vocals on a song before. Wow.
What was he doing as the artist, sending out artist newsletters?
He was sending out kind of like K-Tronada type beats, that sort of vibe. And you know, something that we say a lot around here is like, artists often don't know what's the most special thing about themselves.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah.
And it's our job, and a lot of the work that we do is really just shining a light on it and making it as clear as possible. And we brought him in. Nick heard him speak. He's like, "Oh my God, you literally sound like Barry White. Like, this is insane."
I love the bio that you put on your website. It says, "It's if Barry White didn't realize he was Barry White," or something. The voice of Barry White if he didn't realize it. Yeah, right.
Totally. So no, it's really wild, and he'll definitely one day have a big career in like voiceover work.
Okay.
But yeah, he is an incredible voice, and we kind of worked really hard to create a whole world around him, and that's something that we think, and a lot of the work that we do is focused on, you know, to be an artist in 2021, you're a face, a very anonymous name on a playlist full of with 300 other artists that are nameless, faceless. And we want, when you encounter one of our artists, to feel like, oh my God, I've encountered a whole world that I didn't even know existed.
And tell me about, let's go down this rabbit hole of what an artist world is. What does that mean? Create an entire world around them. I mean,
I think there's music that does well on streaming platforms, but those artists, sorry, let me back up. There are songs that do well on streaming platforms, but you don't know anything about who that artist is. There's no narrative. There's no, they could have, 5 million monthly listeners, but that doesn't mean they could sell any tickets.
Right.
And so a lot of the work that we do is when you encounter Channel Trace on a playlist that you're like, oh my God, like, who is this guy? Oh, he's from Compton. Oh, he's making dance music. He's a black dude from Compton making dance music. This is really interesting. He has songs with Robin. He has songs with Disclosure. He has songs with JPEGMAFIA, or, it really, you're like, oh, this is, and then you go to his Instagram and he's like the coolest looking guy. And you're like, wow, this is really different. And then it's like a whole web that it introduces you to, a whole world. And so, yeah, that's a lot of the strategy and thinking that we do ahead of time.
Cool. And so a big part of, just to even break down what the world means even further, because from that description, it's like, oh, well, doesn't every artist, do collaborations, and they all have an Instagram and they all, whatever. But I think what goes into all of that is, okay, so the fact that anyone would know he's from Compton and doing dance music and all of that, it's like, it's part of his story, and how you communicate the story potentially would be through getting some press. And so when you're searching who is this artist's name, maybe that shows up. You say he looks really cool on his Instagram, so I'm assuming that goes into bringing in a potentially like a creative director, or do you have like on staff creative directors or photographers?
We do. I mean, we do. We work with lots of people, or a couple specific people who we like working with. But also a lot of it is like very, it's decisions that you make that are like, they're creative decisions that you make that really affect the business. So what I mean by that is, for instance, when Channel was getting ready to play his first shows, and this was very 6 months after releasing his first music. Okay. And the obvious answer for him was that he would be a dude with a laptop and like playing beats, and it would be, or maybe he's playing CDJs, like, something like that. Sure. That seems like what you would expect. And so we did a lot of thinking before, being like, how do we make this different? How do we make this stand out? And so his shows, it's now much bigger, but the first early shows were him and two dancers doing a mix of West Coast style dancing that he grew up with some other influences in there too. And people were just like, this is a whole other layer of this. And especially for like cooler music in that space, you don't see stuff like that. And it's either like super precious, highbrow, artistic, like Arca type stuff, or it's Lizzo. And so we're like, how do we make this still needs to be cool as fuck. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse on this. Yeah, that's fine. And edgy and feel relevant, but like really appealing at the same time, and really different. And so it's a lot of that kind of stuff that you're like, oh my God, like this is like, what is this? Like, this is incredible. Cool. And that kind of mentality, basically.
Cool. So it was Control of the first single?
It was, yeah.
And this was what, 2018 when you released that or so?
This was probably,
yeah. Now, things have changed a bit. I saw that, it got some BBC One radio airplay. It got, like in Australia, it caught fire. But what... I guess I want to talk release strategy. Just to wrap up Channel Trace in that a little bit. What was the release strategy then and in 2018, and how that ended up catching, and versus what is your release strategy typically now coming up, 2022?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and it's been really cool. It's very rewarding as an executive to talk about these things in theory and to actually watch it come to life. And it was very deliberate on our part we spent $0 in this country until 2019. Wow. So we spent all of our money in Australia and mostly in a little bit in the UK and a little bit in France. Okay. But I would say 80% in Australia. And he was selling out, 600 cap rooms in Australia 6 months after releasing that first music.
Why Australia?
Basically, there have been a few records that have caught fire out of there, and they're just very lucky having Triple J still be a relevant, station. I don't think the BBC has that influence anymore, but Triple J really does. And Triple J added the song like a week into us releasing it. And we hired teams there. And so that was a very deliberate strategy. And he hadn't even played any shows. He still only played 2 shows in LA.
Wow. Okay.
So that was very, very deliberate. We also were very deliberate. Our mentality about releases in general is that, like if you're a major label, you're going to send out a press release to the whole world. You're going to tell the heads of Spotify, this is coming, pay attention, this is coming. And we sort of have the opposite perspective, which is, I don't want to send it to the most people. I'm going to send it to the right people and in the right order. So for instance, like I could send it to, the person that runs the Mint playlist on Spotify, but maybe I should send it to like the cool younger person who everyone actually listens to what they have to say about music before sending it to the head people.
Okay.
And not that I won't send it to the head people also eventually, but things need to happen organically in order for it to actually catch fire. And so, we do a lot of that kind of thinking in terms of, so for instance, for Channel, we purposely, so we hired an Australian team. We hired this guy who's literally like a guy who I think just parties in Ibiza and sends music to his friends who are DJs.
Okay.
But had him service the record to DJs because we wanted it to be like a weird thing that was coming kind of out of left field. And we wanted that to be how people encountered it rather than hiring like a giant DJ servicing company to blast it out, among their 500 other things that they're blasting out. And so a lot of those decisions that we did early on were really, really impactful for him.
Cool. That's what you kind of have to do when you don't have the resources of a major, but it also, it probably,
well, it's not really about, it's not about the resources. We can spend the money if we want on those things. I just don't, I think fans are really hip. They know when something is coming from, to use a Channel lyric, from the top down. It's they know that like people are sensitive to that. And if it's coming from, if a big DJ is getting this from a giant DJ servicing company, they're going to be like, fuck this. Like, why would I care about this? And just in the same way that you probably have friends in your life who, if they tell you about an artist, you pay attention more than others. And that's how we think about this. And especially in the early stages. So of course we can hire, the biggest DJ plugger or the biggest radio promoter, whatever the thing is that we're talking about. But to us, it's more about like, what is actually the right way and in the right order.
Cool. That makes sense. Now it is interesting going to radio first. I guess Triple J in Australia, it's a unique case, whereas like radio everywhere else is not what Triple J in Australia is. And is that, well, tell me about your kind of the release strategy. It sounds like what release strategies are is going to vary tremendously on every artist based on, how you're going to get specific and targeted and go to those right people, not just blasting out. Doesn't seem like you have a paint by numbers structure like a lot of labels do. But when it comes to spending, when it comes to resources, more specific, I mean, where do you devote a lot of the resources, I guess, if you can say, like when it comes to marketing, for instance? Like if we're just talking marketing, are you focusing on digital marketing, running ads, influencer marketing? Where is the money being spent in marketing these days?
I would say like 90% of the money we spend is on a variety of online stuff. And that can mean a lot of different things. I have a crew of like 19-year-olds that is sort of an ever revolving door, but the new ones always seem to be 18, 19.
Sure.
Who I call like my internet ninjas. And they're just really good at moving the algorithms and really good at planting things online. And we're really into planting memes and planting like really getting in the weeds on that stuff. And that, what that is changes on a daily, monthly basis on what works and what doesn't. But to me, that's how culture moves in 2021. And yes, I'm talking about doing these radio campaigns and stuff for channel, but like it's a lot of this other stuff that has really pushed it for him to be where he is today. And that to me is what this is the stuff that I really get off on, is like finding these like weird black holes on the internet in ways that like, okay, if you get it into this place with this many views, how can we push it to the front? Or like all that stuff it's really the Wild West.
What is moving the needle the most these days in these internet corners? Is it just TikTok? Is that 90% of the strategy? I
mean, TikTok, people are obsessed with TikTok because there's a direct correlation between how many videos are created and to how many streams that means. So like people have a calculation. I don't know what these numbers are, but there is a calculation.
Tell me the number.
No, I can find it for you, but that'd be amazing. Like the A&Rs, like the research A&Rs at major labels know that if a song, I'm making these numbers up, but if a song has 200,000 videos created, it's going to stream X number. It's going to chart to this place. But TikTok, so that's why people are obsessed with TikTok. But I have to say, I was obsessed with TikTok probably 2 years ago. TikTok is incredibly oversaturated now. And we haven't spent real dollars on TikTok in probably 8 months.
What does it mean to spend real dollars? You mean influencers on TikTok, hiring an influencer agency to engage their influencers? Yeah, that kind of thing. But it's, you basically have to spend at 6 figures to even have a chance at TikTok now. And having a chance at TikTok, you mean going viral and starting to chart on Spotify, essentially? Exactly. So for us, like, it's kind of like winning the lottery at this point. Like, it's possible, but it's, there are probably a few records a year that are really good, that have spent that money and are able to push it. But it's really, really hard to break through on TikTok these days. Okay. So what are the other, give me some of these other things that your internet ninjas do that help move the needle. I have guys that are, I'm not going to get into, I'm not going to share all my secrects, but we do a lot of meme campaigns. We do a lot of Reddit campaigns. We do a lot of YouTube campaigns. I'm still a big fan of YouTube, and I still think that's where a lot of stuff really moves. Cool. And, I think so. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. But we'll also do some campaigns where if one particular meme or one particular video is reactive, then we place that in 100 other places. And we're just really smart about, or my guys are really smart about, how to push content out into the world. It's interesting how you said, just going back to the calculation of X number of videos that are created on TikTok equals X number of streams or something. I heard that calculation from someone at marketing, worked in marketing a few years ago, not about TikTok, but it was about knowing it was advertising at the time. It was like Instagram story advertising. It's like, oh, we know because we've worked out the whole thing that if we spend X amount, it just costs this amount of money to chart in the top 50. Right. I'm curious if there's going to be, it was advertising, then it's TikTok, and I'm curious to know like if, where the money is going to be going, because a lot of these things that you mentioned with the Reddit or the YouTube or the memes and the trends and all of that, that all sounds like it's manpower and it's more or less organic. Do you believe that it's more beneficial to kind of have these people, the manpower and that's spending the money on that versus spending money in these more, I guess, traditional, as of the last 5 years, traditional ways of like advertising or influencer marketing or any of that kind of stuff? Well, advertising works to a degree, like to spend money on Instagram stories, to use your example, it's a very, very, very low return on your money. Okay. And so, yes, it works, but you also have to think about, if I'm going to spend 20 grand on Instagram ads, how else could I be spending that money? And that's not going to be a runaway anything. Okay. And
it, maybe it'll give you a bump to, and of course there are tricks to all these things where, as you said, this marketing person knows if I spend X number of dollars, there's a guy who, I know that if you pay him a certain amount of money, he can get you number one on iTunes, stuff like that. There's all those things exist, of course, but those aren't real, but so advertising is an important component, but it's ultimately when you do these things, you're looking to raise general awareness and also looking to give the opportunity for something to have a much wider reach. And so for most things that are successful, there are viral things, and then there are things that grow slowly over time. To chase a viral moment that's not how we run our business. And I just don't think that's literally playing the lottery. So for us, we're always trying to developing an artist and, trying to tell the world about that artist is literally pushing a boulder up a hill. And so you want to think about, okay, where are people going to be most receptive to this? How do I get in front of fans that, are going to like this? How do I get in front of fans that might be a little unsure, but could maybe like it? And you really think about those different opportunities online. And that's what those different outlets are. And there are different campaigns to serve different purposes. And TikTok is much more of like a crapshoot. I'm taking the big swing, going for the viral moment.
Sure.
But and not that there's not strategy behind how you run those campaigns, there is, but it's the other stuff that's more granular that you can spread to the right people feels to me like a better spend of money.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. So I'm very curious about so spending to the right people, the right money, but when you're developing a release strategy and you're deciding you might have a budget. Now, just to, I guess, back up a little bit, because I'm still trying to understand the Godmode business models, because I don't completely. Are you funded? Where does the money come from? Do you work like a management company or a manager where you're taking a commission of the artists? Are artists paying you? How does the business work of what?
Yeah,
Godmode
they're pretty, each silo, like the management is its own thing, the label is its own thing, and the publishing is its own thing. So we as managers, we work like any manager on a commission basis. And for the label, we, earn money once our artists are, earning royalties. And publishing, same deal. Of course, normal publishing. Everything is sort of normal, but just in its own world.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you got started, was this are you VC backed? Are you angel backed? Oh yeah,
sorry, I didn't answer that. No, we are very proudly completely independent.
Okay.
And we, having come from the major label system, I don't want to be beholden to,
sure.
Not that that's bad. It's just for us, we need to move at our own pace and kind of move how we want and hire the people that we want. And so no, we're completely independent and completely self-funded.
Cool. Right on. How many people are part of the Godmode ecosystem that work for Godmode?
Well, our core, we have 3 people on staff, and not including me and my partner, Nick. And then everyone else, there are certain partners that we work with over and over in different territories. But staff wise, that's who we are.
Cool. And so your internet ninjas, these are just either interns or hired guns that are kind of contracted when they come in and out.
Yeah. We don't, we believe that, every campaign is pretty different. Some people we work with over and over, but some people, I'm not going to hire the dance guy for something that's not dance music and sense. I think people are really, have very specific specialties. So we hire it according to what is right for each campaign.
Cool. What would you recommend to artists do these days? They are talented. They have the music, but but they don't have the team. What is your recommendation that artists do to develop a career?
I think artists should I don't think they should necessarily worry about the team. I think the right people will find you. And not that you shouldn't, try to make connections and meet people, but artists should just try to present themselves in a way that they think is best. I think they should just kind of do what they do and just try to go out and network as much as possible. Not necessarily for the sake of, I need to hire a manager. Oh, I need to do this, but just because to help to use an example, like Channel Trace is incredible at kind of going out and doing the thing. And he will go out to parties and be like, oh, I just met Prince, obviously not Prince, but just but that's who he is. And he's very good at that. And that is probably one of the most important things you can do. And you can do that virtually too, even if you live in a place that's not, LA or New York or London. I think there are ways to make connections with different people and try to just work on stuff with them and find common ground. I think that's probably one of the most important things to do. So
connecting with people who you respect. Now, are you talking on the creative side to collaborate with or more on the business side to...
Yeah, both.
Potentially help? Okay.
Both. I mean, I wouldn't say, I don't know that. I think on the creative side, it's just good to make connections, even if it's like this person makes really different stuff than me. Let's just try to make stuff. And because who knows who that person knows, who that, and then it kind of grows from there. And then on the business side too, I think, I don't know that, I think I would worry less about that, but I think if there's stuff that you like that someone works on, I think you can say, hey, I really like this, and just try to build natural relationships in that space.
Cool. These days, I know you work with artists that are on both majors and indies. Do you think that there is a place for the major labels still? And if so, what is that place and what is their purpose?
Definitely. I mean, we love working with our major label partners, and I think there's just a time and a place, and they're good at a very specific thing. And they don't know how to get artists from 0 to 70. And I think they all outwardly say that at this point. They're not good at getting them to that point. But when something is at that level, they are very, very good at getting it to 100. And they, have the relationships or have the quite literally equity in those companies that they will get those placements and all that. But but that's sort of the level on which to interact with them.
Gotcha. We've talked a lot about artist development, what you've done. What about fan development, and how do you go from getting streams on Spotify or videos created on TikTok or memes spread around on Reddit or whatever it is to then building an actual ticket buying fan base? Yeah.
I think I'll use one of our artists, JPEGMAFIA, as an example. He has an extremely dedicated cult fan base, and he is, his fans will conspire about if he said one thing if he tweeted this one thing, then what does that mean about X, Y, and Z? And, fully. Yeah. Honestly, it's like their own version of it. Yeah, and, and I'm like, no, I think he just had a couple too many drinks and was tweeting, but but
naturally, right.
But no, so we do a lot with his fans. Like, for instance, when we were getting ready to announce his tour this fall, his North American tour, I was really, and this was the first headline tour I had announced post-COVID or post-quarantine.
Yeah.
So I had been hearing about other tours not doing well, or just tickets kind of plateauing. And so I was really, really anxious about just putting up a tour. And, and especially it actually was right when Delta was peaking. We were supposed to be announcing it. And everyone was like, nah, you're fine. Like, his fans are so obsessed with him. Like, it's, not that type of artist that you have to worry about. But so I worked with some of my internet guys and my staff here to basically, we came up with the idea to do a campaign where we wouldn't even announce the tour to the public. And we got basically like a secret pre-sale link that we would only drop in there's a Reddit forum of his like most obsessed fans, and where they're all doing all their conspiring. And so we had JPEG infiltrate the Reddit and start just in his own style, very sort of a little bit chaotic, a little bit off. And he's actually he's a veteran. He fought in a number of wars over the last couple of years, and not a couple of years, in the last 15 years. And so he dropped a very specific photo from when he was in the military. And it was a photo that had never before been seen. So the fans are going crazy. Like, who is this? Who is this? What's going on? Then he drops another photo of him when he was like a teenager. And they're like, oh my God, this must be JPEG. This must be him. And then we dropped like a tiny snippet of a song that had the next single that had not been released yet. And then everyone's like, oh, this is him. This is him. It's confirmed.
Cool. Yeah.
And then he went in the forum and just said, hey, I'm not telling anyone this, but here a link to buy tickets, and go get them before anyone else does. Yeah. And we sold 80% of the tickets from that link.
Incredible. It's the exclusivity and feeling like you're part of that private club. I just got an email from Spotify saying, you're so-and-so's one of top fans. Here's a here's a pre-sale link to their tour that's not on sale yet. I was like, oh shit. You feel special. Now on the other end of the spectrum, because you said you started working with JPEG when he already kind of had, it was established a bit and had that diehard base. I think that's a brilliant campaign, and that it's a testament, and it shows, it worked. What about channel? And someone would kind of started from, not a diehard fan base. How do you go about that converting? Okay, he's got some airplay in Australia. He's got some traction, but he hasn't really played the States, or you don't know. How do you develop the base there, or even convert people from listeners to fans?
It's a lot of what I talked about earlier about really creating that world that you encounter. And so I think it's creating intrigue behind a person rather than just releasing music, if that makes sense. Okay. And so, but there's also a lot of just like work that channel had to do in order to do that. Like every show he played, he stayed after and took pictures and signed stuff with every single person. And he responds to DMs, and it's a lot of that kind of stuff that really, it's the real engagement stuff. It's stuff that sounds so obvious, but it really, really works. And it's a lot of the cosign work that we did too. It's like, okay, he's going to do a song with this person, or he's going to do a song. Oh, how is he in another photo with James Blake? How is he in a photo with YG? Or, people start really paying attention and being like, who is this guy? I'm really interested. And then they're like really paying attention. Yeah. And so it's a lot of that work, and, the work to try to make it more than just, a song on a playlist, basically.
In terms of communication avenues to the fans, what do you think is the most effective these days?
The answer probably is social media, but and probably Twitter and Instagram. Okay. But you really, it's so funny. We always kind of are pulling our hair out here whenever we announce a tour, and then we see all these comments and people are like, why aren't you like the tour will have been announced 2 weeks before, and they're like, oh my God, when is this tour happening? And so you have to really, really hit people over the head with it. And I'm not saying that has to come directly from the artist. That can be through ads, that can be through, other lanes, but you really have to kind of hit people over the head with it. I think, of course there are mailing lists that are still really, really powerful. But that's something you have to really kind of commit to gathering that data from day one, and really, really building. And also just being deliberate about messaging too. Whether it's a mailing list or whether it's like community, I don't know if you know about that.
The
that's like the
SMS
texting
text
thing.
marketing. Yep.
So I think there are good and bad ways to use all these things, but I think if there's an elegant way to do this that I think can be very, very effective. Amazing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Talya, this is so informative, so helpful. I know that people listening to this have really, they have a lot of things that they're thinking about, and it's great to hear your perspective and to know that there are these alternative models happening right now, and that as we are in this new music industry, that it's a brand new system and structure of how everything is working, and you're one of the pioneers of this new model. So very cool to hear your perspective. There's one final question that I have that I ask everybody who comes onto the show. What does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
Well, I wanted to clarify on that question because I think people answer it differently.
Yes.
Is that meant for me to make it or for artists to make it?
However you want to take it, but you can answer both of those. Okay.
I think for artists, I think there are a lot of different ways to make it. And I think it's about moving culture. And really, it's been incredible, for the artists that I work with. Whether it's changing how Black men are perceived in this country, or changing how, there's just there are a lot of different ways that affects the world that we live in. And that to me is really exciting. And I think that's how an artist can really make an impact. Because I think there's a lot of different ways to have a career. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to make money, a lot of different ways to have a career. And that can mean a lot of different things to different people. But I think changing culture is something that is undeniable.
Totally. And for you?
For me, I don't know. I think...
or for Godmode?
Yeah, I think making it is building is not necessarily, I think this could be interpreted for the artists too, is there's not a certain way to do things. And I think now more than ever, it's the Wild West out there, and in a really exciting way. And I think if you can build and do what you love, then you're winning. So.
Talya Elitzer, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.